Good morning and welcome to Cleveland Park Congregational United Church of Christ. We are an open and affirming congregation committed to racial justice. Whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. Just a couple of announcements this morning. Today after church, there's a coffee hour conversation about our finances. A reminder, it's stewardship season, get your pledges in. But if you have questions about our church's budget, what it looks like, how we spend our money, and the role pledges play in funding all that we do, join the finance team after worship to learn more and ask questions. And coming up in the next week, on Friday is dinner and a movie. If you're interested in joining, please email Dan Sack. And next Sunday after church, we'll have another coffee hour conversation on why church with Maggie Miklo. Good morning, welcome to church.
Good morning, everyone. It is good, as always, to see you. I'm grateful for this sanctuary, which means safe space, and pray that everyone worldwide may find sanctuary of their own. This morning's service is going to range from global to the very local. Our treasurer, Don Marshall, as Heidi said, will give us a glimpse into the world of church finances and why our pledges are such an important part of the picture. After worship, he and the rest of our volunteer finance team, John Tishy and Robert Glass, will host a coffee hour conversation to provide more information and answer any questions about our congregation and its budget. Well, maybe not any questions about our congregation, but certainly as it relates to our budget. This is really important as we focus on our church's future and the work we're called to do in the world, so I hope you'll join us. Emily Parker is going to be our main sermon speaker this morning, sharing her experience with the Interfaith Peace Movement, calling for immediate cessation of bombing, humanitarian assistance, and hostage negotiations in the Israel-Gaza war. If you'd like an updated action alert of things that you can do for peace, please pick one up in the entryway. We'll begin by lighting our candles of hope and healing for the world. May this light illumine all places, beings, and situations without exception, near and far. Please join me for our call to worship. Turn around, God. Give us a little grace. Make us glad as many days as we've been horrified. Lead us with mercy and kindness. And together we pray, Source of life, we regret to inform you that your children are not getting along, and the Bible may be part of the problem. Its words don't always teach us to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly. Help us to remember that human beings wrote, translated, interpreted, retranslated, and reinterpreted every part of this book. It contains multiple perspectives and leaves out many different voices. It harbors hate while mandating love. Creator of all, we ask that you enlighten these contradictions. Open our ears to those who have been silenced and guide us in discerning what is true by the compassion that is shown. Amen. Please rise in body and/or spirit as you are able for the opening hymn found on an insert in your order of service. now invite you to join in the time of silent reflection. When we gather for worship, we heed God's call and honor our need for Sabbath and rest. When we enter into silence, we attune our hearts and open our minds to a presence greater than our own. As we begin this short period of meditation, I encourage you to bring your full self to this present moment. Set aside any distractions, lay down your burdens, and take a deep, life-giving breath. God is with us. Let us reflect upon the week that has passed. What are the joys we have celebrated? And what concerns have we endured? Are there things we have done that we ought not to have done? And are there things we have left undone that we ought to have done? As we look forward to the week ahead, what help will we need from God or neighbor? And what can we do to nurture love of God and love of neighbor in the world? We'll close in prayer. Source of life, for the joys we have celebrated, we give you thanks. God of compassion, for the concerns we have endured, please tend our hearts. Spirit of justice, for those things we have misdone, transform us with your love. Companion God, as we look forward to the week ahead, be ever present with us. And great lover of all, as we seek to nurture love of God and neighbor in the world, guide our actions and our prayers. Amen. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." As we know, this week, communities from Lewiston, Maine, to the Gaza Strip, to places in Israel, to places in Acapulco and Uganda and Argentina and DC, are carrying heavy burdens, violence and poverty, political turmoil. And so as we think about these burdens, which do not lessen our own, because we each have our own real burdens as well, I ask that you remember that it is in community that we find the strength to hold them. It is in community that we find the purpose and the call to know what it is we're meant to do. And it is in community that we come together and know that there is something greater, more powerful, more peaceful, more loving than any of these situations or places or burdens that we and others may hold. And so this morning, I ask that you center into your own heart. Center into your own heart and find that place of peace and love within yourself, because if you can't find it there, it will be difficult to find it anywhere. So just take a moment, maybe put your hands over your heart if that helps, because offering ourselves compassion is an important part of it all. Center into that place of peace and love. Connecting to a God of peace and love, to a community of peace and love. Together, join me in Jesus' prayer. Source of life, light, and peace, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. I now invite all those online to unmute, and you in the sanctuary to turn and greet your neighbor in the pew, sharing the peace and love of God as you do. May peace be with you.
Peace be with you. Peace, everyone.
Peace.
Peace. Happy Sunday from cold Montana. Hi, Jerry and Chuck. Hi, Amy. Good to hear your voice. Hi, Ellen.
Mom, is it still 15 degrees in Montana?
Well, it's probably hiked up to about 20 right now, but yesterday morning it was -1.
Oh,
But we went out cross-country skiing.
It was great.
Peace, Elle.
here it's about 15 degrees in Montana right now, and they have snow, so. All right, so everyone online, please remute, and we'll come back together. Going to invite anyone young or young at heart to come join me. And I'm going to say that let's just hold Stella in prayer, because Catherine told me she really wanted to come to church this morning. Yay, Stella. But she has a bad sore throat. So we love you, Stella. Hi, Lila. Oh, check out those cool shoes. Yes, love it. All right, so welcome everyone. It's really good to see you as always. So I have a question for you. Does anybody know what the word instrument means? Yeah, Noah. Oh.
It doesn't have to
Wait, let me make sure. Nope, there we go. Sorry.
It doesn't have to necessarily be for music.
Mhm.
There are scientific instruments like on, say, Voyager 1.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Anybody else have an understanding of the word instrument they want to share? Yeah, Charles.
An instrument makes music.
An instrument can make music, absolutely. Doesn't have to, that's right. Noah clarified that for us. There's more than one kind of instrument. Is there any kind of instrument outside of, say, like the Beauty and the Beast movie that can use itself? Like, okay, so Dorothy played a musical instrument this morning, the flute, and I'm just wondering if Dorothy hadn't been there, would the flute have just been able to play?
No.
Okay, all right, that's,
If you like any instrument, like even a scientific instrument, like my example on Voyager 1
yeah,
there has to be a human controlling it.
okay, I think that that's very fair to say. AI aside, we will let the future be the future. But yes, I would agree that an instrument kind of needs a being, because you could say that, like, you know, like chimpanzees and gorillas could use instruments in certain ways, you know. But it definitely needs a being, you know, a sentient being to do something with it. Okay, all right, so next question. What does peace mean? And I think I asked you a little bit about this last Sunday or the Sunday before, but I'm just curious if you all, you know, we have different kids up here every Sunday, so I'm just curious what peace means to you. Peace, the word peace, P-E-A-C-E. Because you're right, there are other spellings of the word peace, and that would mean something different. Anybody? Peace? There's not a right answer to this. Just what peace means to you. Like maybe when you were putting your hand over your heart earlier during our prayer and finding peace and love in your heart, what did you find there? Would anybody out here like to answer that question? What does peace mean to you? Calm? All right, Robert says calm. Okay.
Absence of war.
Say it again.
Absence of war.
Absence of war. Okay. Tranquility. Carol says tranquility. One of our many carols says tranquility. Another Carol is about to say something else.
Justice.
Justice. Oh, sorry, we've got somebody up here. Noah. Thank you.
Absence of danger.
Absence of danger. Yeah, feeling peaceful because you are not feeling afraid or in danger. Yeah. So we have so many different sort of, you know, a full circle sense. It's the absence of war, it's calm, it's, Robert, you said calm. Carol, remind me what you said? Tranquility. Just a whole sort of like both personal feelings of what peace can be, but also in a more community or even global level of what peace can be. All right, so now I'm going to put those two together. There was this really cool guy named St. Francis in medieval times. Okay, some of you may have heard of St. Francis because we talk about him at the Blessing of the Animals. And he's the patron saint of the environment and all creatures. But St. Francis was also a real peace guy. And he wrote this beautiful poem prayer where he asked God to make him an instrument of peace. And so I'm curious what it would look like to be an instrument of peace. Like, you're the one playing this instrument, right? What would it look like to play the instrument of peace, or to use the scientific instrument of peace? It's a challenging question. Trust me, greater, older, bigger people than you have really struggled with this question. What does it look like to be an instrument of peace?
The first thing that came to my mind was a harp that looks like a peace symbol.
Ooh, that's beautiful. What a beautiful image. A harp that looks like a peace symbol. Yeah. If you were playing yourself as an instrument of peace, either as like a flute or a harp or, a scientific tool in the laboratory, if you were playing yourself as an instrument of peace, what sort of music or service might you want to have going out into the world? What might you do as an instrument of peace? What would that look like? Yeah, Noah?
Entertainment.
Entertainment. Can you say a little bit more?
Well, I'm a very big game designer.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, games have a lot of content for people.
Yep.
And yeah, also, I don't think we should deny that games are entertainment when there's a really old game console, and some of the audience might have heard of it, the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Ah, yes. Cool. Thank you so much. Any other ideas about how you could be an instrument of peace in the world? Anybody out here want to give a... Oh, good, Layla. I had this, that's why I walked over here. You had this look on your face like maybe there was something noodling in there.
So maybe it's something that could not stop violence, but maybe make it have like a less of a big impact on the world. So I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Not stop violence, but have less of a big impact on the world. And I would add to that, maybe act in ways that are like just living out peace in the world. Maybe in such a way that we even prevent some violence. I would like to suggest that we can each be peace bringers to the world, instruments of peace in the world by the way we live our lives, by the way we treat our friends, by the way we treat the people in our church, by the way we treat the people at school, by the way we treat the people we don't like very much. We can be instruments of peace, and that's my prayer for all of us today, is that we, in this crazy, crazy world that doesn't have enough peace, we can feel empowered by knowing we can bring peace. We can be instruments of peace. All right, so you beloved, beautiful instruments of peace, you have Marion, and also I want to introduce Jane. Can you stand up, Jane? Jane is going to be, she's our high school intern who's going to be helping out with Sunday school. Yay, Jane, thank you. We're so happy to have you. And so if you all want to go with Marion and Jane right now, I hope you have a wonderful Sunday school time. Oh, you have a choice. You can either stay here. Layla is wondering because she and Noah are in the older class. So you can either stay here because your class will meet next Sunday. So you can either hang out and worship, or you can go down with this class and help out. Your choice. Okay? Okay, cool. All right, have fun.
Okay, we good?
Yes.
Am I allowed to add one thing to the Time for All Ages? I just want to say that as we experience most weeks here, I think to tag on to what Noah said, I think entertainment can bring us together. Games can bring us together. Music can bring us together. And the entertainment of the Time for All Ages. I think that's an example of peace too, is people coming together rather than being divided. Okay, buckle in, folks, here we go. The first scripture reading today is from Joshua chapter 3, verses 7 through 11. The Lord said to Joshua, "This day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, so that they may know that I will be with you as I was with Moses. You are the one who shall command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant. When you come to the edge of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan." Joshua then said to the Israelites, "Draw near and hear the words of the Lord your God." Joshua said, "By this you shall know that among you is the living God, who without fail will drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. The ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is going to pass before you into the Jordan." The second reading is from Leviticus chapter 19, verses 33 through 34. "When an alien resides with you in your land, you shall not oppress the alien. The alien who resides with you shall be to you as the native born among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." Next is Matthew chapter 22, verses 8 through 14. "Then he said to the slaves, 'The wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore into the main streets and invite everyone you find to the wedding banquet.' Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered all whom they found, both good and bad. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to see the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing a wedding robe. And he said to him, 'Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?' And he was speechless. Then the king said to the attendants, 'Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.'" And finally, Matthew, also chapter 22, verses 34 through 40. "When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, an expert in the law, asked Jesus a question to test him. 'Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?' He said to him, 'You shall love your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
Thank you, Dawn. You always get extra credit points when you have all of those difficult names, right? Absolutely. Yes, yes. So my question is, which is it? Do we follow a God who gifts us with a piece of land by driving out the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites? Or do we follow a God who instructs us not to oppress the alien, proclaiming that the alien who resides with us shall be to us as the native born among us? You shall love the alien as yourself. Or do we follow a Jesus who tells us a story that ends with anger, revenge, and exclusion? Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. Or do we follow a Jesus who summarizes all the law and the prophets as love God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself? Here's the thing. The Bible is full of contradictions. Meaning, if we expect to open it and get the same God or even same Jesus in every passage, it's not going to happen. So what do? How do we discern which God to follow, which Jesus to hear? Well, I plan to spend an entire sermon on this question, but Spirit spoke, and now Emily is going to preach. So I'll summarize my part in 2 words: contemplation and community. First, contemplation. Learning to listen for the still, small voice of God, or as Richard Rohr calls it, our true self. We can't do this if our scattered attention is constantly captured by the noise of media, culture, marketing, and our own internal chaos. If we truly want to hear what's beneath all this, it's our duty, big word. It's our duty as adults who live in this complicated world to take time out and spend this time in silence, listening within and getting some clarity about who God is, what we're called to do, and how we're called to do it. Next, community. Part of gathering as a church or any other faith community is having the humility to understand we can't go it alone. And we certainly don't have all the answers as individuals. So we listen to one another, share with one another, and together come up with a communal understanding of the God we're called to follow and the Jesus that guides us. Together we discern whether it's love or revenge that will move us, whether it's exclusion or inclusion that will be our way. This morning, we're going to listen to Emily Parker, our congregation's Mission and Social Action Chair, who's been deeply moved and called to become more involved in the peace movement related to the Israel-Gaza war. Hearing her voice in our community is part of our discernment in this present moment. What are we called to do? I am so grateful to Emily for the heart, mind, and soul she brings to our midst.
Good morning. Last Wednesday, I participated in civil disobedience at the US Capitol. I'm here to share my experience with you and also address why I was there and why I felt called to do what is in my power in this situation. But first, I guess I want to give a bit of a self-indulgent disclaimer. I do not feel well prepared. While I am not a skilled public speaker, I am not comfortable speaking in public. I thought by sharing my experience, I am continuing with what I'm doing in my power. I am not a smooth public speaker, and it requires a lot of preparation. I set aside time to prepare, but I cannot say I practiced. I spun my wheels. I knew what I wanted to say, but I didn't know how to say it, how to structure it, how to do it justice, how to do justice to what's happening in Israel, in Gaza, what's happening here. And then I ran out of time. So I appreciate your patience, understanding with me, which I've always felt in this congregation, given all my flaws and imperfections. So what came to me and what I think is going to guide me as I do this is a line from a Leonard Cohen song. And we were chanting this, not this past Wednesday, but the action the Wednesday before last, where I was outside of the Capitol. And so it goes, forget your perfect offerings, just ring the bells that still can ring. There is a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. So last Wednesday, Jewish Americans and their allies held sit-ins in the offices of Senators Chuck Schumer and Bernie Sanders and Representatives Catherine Clark and Hakeem Jeffries. Outside the Capitol, hundreds more gathered to mourn all Palestinians and Israelis killed since October 7th. While we were mourning, we called for our elected leaders to call for an immediate ceasefire, the release of hostages, and an end to the siege on Gaza. A nonprofit called If Not Now organized this action. If Not Now describes itself as a movement of American Jews organizing our community to end US support for Israel's apartheid system and demand equality, justice, and a thriving future for all Palestinians and Israelis. I participated as an ally. In this framework, Jewish and Palestinian safety are intertwined. What I've heard so often when I've been at these actions, that many of which are led by Jewish peace organizations, are that our safety must not come at the expense of Palestinian safety and freedom. It cannot come at their expense. And in the past few weeks, as I've tried to participate as much as I can in this peace movement calling for a ceasefire, I've seen similar themes. At the heart of this movement is a growing coalition of organizations and individuals representing a range of identities and backgrounds. Muslim Americans, Jewish Americans, racial justice groups, people of color. Folks, the progressive Christians are issuing statements. They are not driving this movement, and maybe that's good. This movement is being driven by young people. And groups, and marginalized groups who, from what I can see, are seeing intersectionality and seeing that their struggles are all connected, instead of being in competition with one another in a zero-sum game. Anti-Semitism, racism, Islamophobia, and homophobia are all connected because all of these feed on hate and fear towards one group of people. In this lens, the struggles of Black Americans are tied to the Palestinian struggle. Last I checked, 18 members of the House of last time I checked, 18 members of the House of Representatives had signed the Ceasefire Now resolution introduced by Representative Cori Bush. Not one of these signatories is white. If that is not a testament to the role racism is playing to what's happening in Gaza and what's happening here in our political institutions, I don't know what is. No one is free until everyone is free. No one is safe until everyone is safe. While seemingly simple, this notion is profound and powerful. I felt that we were being presented with a false binary. We either stand with Israel as it inflicts war crime after war crime on the people of Gaza with weapons provided by our government, or we accept and justify the vicious, unspeakable atrocities committed by Hamas as legitimate resistance to settler colonialism. And yes, I'm going to put that in quotes, because I think referring to Israelis as colonists ignores the pain of the Jewish people and why so many felt they needed a Jewish state. I am not ignoring the pain that that state has inflicted on the Palestinians. I can hold both. And the people I was with on Wednesday held both. With that context, I'm going back to Wednesday. And Ellen, I meant to start my timer and I didn't. And I have not done a run through, so I don't know if I'm going, yeah, okay. I don't know if I've been time limit. Okay, so with that, back to Wednesday. I was with a group holding a sit-in at Representative Catherine Clark's office. She's a Democrat from Massachusetts. I grew up in Boston. A lot of the people in my group had traveled from the Boston area to be there, all people with jobs, young people, but felt they had to be here. In the morning, we participated in civil disobedience training, and we started to get to know each other. So we went to the Capitol, and we entered Catherine Clark's office in sort of the waiting room. Melissa was our group lead. She was talking to us during the training. She's a young Jewish American, very nice. If you meet her, you would not think, you say, nice Jewish girl, not assuming. But she spoke for us when we got there, and she explained why we are there. We are mourning, we are grieving Israeli and Palestinian deaths, and we want to speak to the representative, and we're not leaving until she calls for a ceasefire. And suddenly, her presence became commanding, not aggressive, not intimidating, but she was motivated by conviction and love, and she became a force of fierce love. And I wish I had more time to talk about this movement and how moved I've been by the people involved in it, but I don't think I have time to go into that much detail. So the aide said, well, she's on the floor of the House, you can come back. Melissa said, no, we're gonna wait here. So some of us sat on the floor of the waiting room, others stood in the back. We had banners. We recited the mourner's Kaddish. Well, I didn't recite it because I don't know the words. It's in Aramaic, I think, not even Hebrew, which I don't know Hebrew either. We read out loud the names of Israelis and Palestinians killed in this month's violence. We sang Lo Lisa Goy is a popular one. Some of us shared why we were there. Seth is the youth leader at his synagogue. he was holding the pain. He has a lot of Israelis in his congregation. He was holding their pain while holding the pain all the Palestinians are feeling right now. He said he was there in part because he wants his students to see that living Jewish values often happens outside of the synagogue. Yitzhak has Israeli relatives. Some of them are calling for a ceasefire now. Some of them live on settlements. He doesn't support their attitude towards Palestinians, but he wants all of them to be safe and okay. And the same for the people living in Gaza and the West Bank, the Palestinians in the West Bank. When asked why he was partaking in this action, Charles, who traveled from Pennsylvania, simply said, "I'm a nurse." I interpret that to mean that his whole point of his occupation, what he does every day, is try to keep people healthy and alive. And he is continuing that mission outside of his work and his activism. Samir told us he had grown up in Beirut. His family, his immediate family, left before the Israeli war of 2006. He says when he was a child, he asked his father, "Are Israelis bad people?" And his father said, "No, they're not bad people. They have a bad government." And Samir said that if his father had answered that question differently, he might have followed a path of hate instead of where he is now, which is willing to stand with Jews, with Christians, to say, "Stop this. Every life matters." Some of us wept. I wept. My voice broke several times as I read through the long list of names. I mean, we didn't even do all of them. It was maybe 500. More than once, I realized I was reading the names of an entire family, 3 generations, who had all perished. Seth blew the shofar. Later, when Representative Clark refused to meet with us, we moved to the hallway just outside her office. Seth again blew the shofar. We sang and we chanted, calling for a ceasefire now. A bunch of Capitol Police arrived. One of them had a megaphone, gave us the warning. We were arrested. It was intense. I've never been arrested. It's not comfortable to have your hands like this with the zip ties. But I just focused on the singing. Melissa had started, but Sarah, another woman in the group, led us in singing the whole way while they walked us out the halls of Congress, in the elevator, outside, even in the police van. And that, it was only when I stopped outside, when we got outside and we were waiting to be searched and enter the van, that I realized how fast my heart was beating. But I do want to pause here and acknowledge how little risk I was actually taking in this action. We knew, in all likelihood, this would be a citation equivalent to a parking ticket. We knew we would most likely not be held for more than a few hours, but you never know. Just in case, I made sure Magda was with John that night, the dog was with his dog walker. I was ready. And Magda doesn't know about this, by the way. Okay. We were inspired by the civil rights movement, but we were not facing, participants of the civil rights movement were facing brutal violence from police. I was treated gently. I was well aware this is not how the experience Black Americans and other people have with police. The officer who cuffed me asked me if it was too tight. The way he guided me through the halls was almost gentle, like he was escorting me, I don't know, at a ball or something. They gave us water while we were waiting to be processed. Anyways, when I did enter the van, oh shoot. Okay. When I got to the van, anyways, I'll skip that part. So we had to trust each other and the lead for our group, and we had to be deeply in sync to be able to just glance at someone. We were reading the names, and when you just are overcome and can't read anymore, you just give a glance to someone else and they pick up reading. So I felt this was like, I feel like I experienced a deep communal mourning that our Faith Life group had discussed at our last meeting, and I felt love. I'm reminded of John 4:16, God is love. And I felt that as both an external and internal force. So for me, that experience itself. We prayed in that while we were doing that action, but the whole action was a prayer in itself. It was an offering, and it was like deeply meaningful and transformative. And here I was going to say, I can't leave it at that. I can't just talk about my religious experience and not talk about why we were there, what is happening in Gaza, what the Israeli government and the US government is inflicting upon the people of Gaza. I don't have time, but also you guys, and most of you, I'm sure, follow the news. I have a hard time with the media coverage, but I can give you resources if you want more detail. So I guess I'm going to skip over that. I was going to talk about my friends in Gaza. I do want to just say this one thing, if it's okay. And I need to talk about the call to action. Okay. So a couple of days ago, as I'm sure most of you know, the Israeli government cut off Gaza's communication and started phase 2 of the war, ground war. And what I came across last night, where I was like fact-checking for facts that I realized this morning I didn't need to include, when Netanyahu announced this, he quoted the biblical command to remember what the Amalekites did to the Israelis. I think and I want to mention this because it fits in so well with the scriptures we were reading. And so what I found out is that is a reference to 1 Samuel 15:3. And I am reading from the New Revised Standard Version. Now go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have. Do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. I only found 2 minor papers that mention this. I don't know if like my Google is being whatever, anyways. But I also learned that Christians have used this verse to justify genocide against Native Americans and Tutsis in Rwanda. I was going to talk about my friends in Gaza, the family, but I won't. I'll just say, given my government's role in the war crimes the Israeli government is carrying out against the people of Gaza, which is not going to keep Israelis safe, which is not going to keep the hostages safe. That's why we put that demand. The only way you keep to free the hostages is to demand a ceasefire and negotiations. But the Israeli government has made it clear that is not their priority. Life is not a priority. Civilian life is not a priority. And the other reason is because there were people there who welcomed me into their homes. And if I ever meet them again, should they survive this, I want to look them in the eye and say I did what was in my power. So I don't even say if I can say that's why I'm called. Do we choose a calling? But I feel confident that I need to do what's in my power. It's hard to figure out what that is each day, especially as a single mom with a job. But I guess I want to ask you to consider what's in your power and what will you do in this moment. I know not everyone can demonstrate, not everyone can be at a protest or a rally. What do we do? What do we do in the face of this the powers that are so strong? And what I think is that the politicians supporting this are not doing this out of conviction. They are doing it out of with their perceived political self-interest, because they think there will be a political cost to call for a ceasefire. I don't understand the climate in this country where it's controversial to call for a ceasefire, where it's controversial to say these 2.2 million people, half of whom are children, deserve to live, and to say we don't support the genocide of Palestinians. That should not be controversial. So we need to show them that there will be a political cost for not calling for a ceasefire. And we can do this. The most important thing is to call our representatives in Congress, because that makes a difference when they get calls. And I know that a lot of us live in DC, and that's very frustrating to hear. And I never bothered to call other representatives because I thought they won't care if I'm not a constituent. But I'm learning that's not necessarily the case. They don't always ask. And while it's most effective if you're a constituent, they also are keeping tabs on the general pulse of America. So this does not take long. We have action alerts if you want a script, but you don't have to be eloquent. The most important thing is to say, I want you to sign, for the House, I want you to sign the ceasefire now resolution. For the Senate, I want you to call for a ceasefire. You can mention ending the siege of Gaza, ending the siege on Gaza and the hostages if you want. It doesn't have to be eloquent. You're going to be speaking to probably a 24-year-old who's just keeping a list, checking a box. I got so many calls for a ceasefire. I got so many calls against it. They're not going to tell the representative, I got 4 calls for a ceasefire, and one of them wasn't eloquent. Anyways, so you can do that. I hope you will consider making that your offering, and that can be a daily offering. Just keep calling or writing till they till they sign on to a ceasefire. I would say for DC, focus on Hakeem Jeffries, and then his number is in that sheet. And if I can just have one more minute, I was really happy when I saw the prayer of St. Francis that Ellen had put on the bulletin, because I love that prayer and I've been saying it a lot this morning. So here, I won't do the whole thing. I'll just do the little thing that's in the front. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Ceasefire now, let Gaza live.
Needless to say, that takes courage, and I really want to thank Emily for sharing. In the interest of time, we're going to move straight into our joys and concerns now. And I'm going to keep them fairly short as well. God, hear our healing prayers for Aaron's mother, who is in the hospital again, and for all who are managing long-term health concerns and diagnoses. Hear our prayers for all of those grieving the loss of loved ones and the loss of their feeling of safety in Maine. For Peg and Harold and their family as they mourn the loss of their grandson, Tyler. For Pastor Tom, who is the pastor of the Eritrean congregation that worships here on Sunday afternoon, and his wife Lola as they mourn the loss of Lola's sister. For all those in Gaza, Israel, and elsewhere who are in harm's way, particularly in Acapulco, Mexico. For all who are grieving the loss of loved ones, and anyone, anywhere, who is sick or grieving or in need. If you'd like to share a concern, please raise your hand and Alan will bring you the microphone. Serena and Chris. Oh, thanks, John. Chris and Serena.
A concern for Jill, who lost her husband unexpectedly this week.
Is that Jill, did you say? Okay, thank you, Chris.
My friend Carolyn, who is suffering domestic abuse and is trying to figure out how to get out of her marriage.
Thank you, Serena. Any other concerns? Okay, we'll move to joys. God, we give thanks for Nick's Special Olympic State soccer tournament, for the new Aging Gracefully and Gratefully group, which will be meeting once a month, and for all those who devote their lives to creating peace, joy, and justice in this world. Other joys?
As you know, my husband had a cancer recurrence scare a couple weeks ago, and thankfully and gratefully, it turned out to be nothing. So we were very relieved and grateful.
Hallelujah for that. And I do want to share that Sarah Spey, who is joining us from Norway, says that she would like prayers for her best friend Amelia, who lost her father suddenly, and for her mother and sister. Oh, Carol.
A joy, if that's the correct word, for Emily and her commitment and willing to share for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol. I invite you all just to take a moment to hold all of these joys and concerns in your heart as we listen to Maggie, Dawn, and Serena share one voice.
the one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
Now I'd like to invite Don Marshall to come up. Don is our treasurer. He's going to share some words about our budget, and I hope you'll join him as well after worship.
Morning. I am the church's treasurer, and yeah, I've got a few things to say today, but I'll start with telling you about my recent vacation. I was just on a trip to Italy, and while I was there, I saw the San Petronio Basilica in Bologna. It's a striking church, in part because the facade is actually kind of ugly. I don't know if we have that picture. Yep, there I am. To be fair, it's only half ugly. The lower part is this beautiful red and white marble, and the upper part is this ugly brown brick. The church has actually a pretty wild history involving untimely deaths and corruption and a jealous pope, all of which played a role in how it looks. But ultimately, it came down to money. Marble is expensive and brick is cheap, so when the liras dried up, the plans changed. Now, San Petronio's malformed looks don't make it any less adequate as a place of worship. We know that spirituality exists outside the realm of physical things. But seeing all of Italy's gorgeous cathedrals and then looking at that building made me think about the more tangible aspects of our church and the really important and sometimes taken for granted role they play in enhancing our worship and spiritual growth, in fostering our community and helping us appreciate and celebrate God's glorious gifts. And so today I come to you with just a simple request, that the congregation approve funding for a beautiful marble facade for our church. You know what? We don't need marble. Polished granite would be fine. So, all joking aside, I do have a request. And it begins with asking you to consider the value of the more tangible aspects of our church, our surroundings, our music, our programs, our people. You've heard this request before, of course, but today I'm asking with a slightly greater sense of urgency. Because like those disappointed Bolognese religious leaders who ran out of liras, we are at a point in which we may have to consider changing our plans. The bottom line is that our expenses have increased substantially, and our income has not kept pace. So I'll review a few numbers for you. On the expense side, we expect to spend a little over $404,000 this year. In 2018, we spent $323,000. That's a 25% increase in just 5 years. And these increases have come in areas that I think most of us would consider fairly essential. I'll look at just a few of them. We're committed to paying fair wages to our staff, and the annual cost of living adjustments that we give them have jumped significantly the last few years. Our payroll for 3 key positions, pastor, administrator, and custodian, that payroll is up $50,000 since 2018. Our music program benefited from Dorothy Mora's generosity for years, but we now have a paid music director, and our overall music expenses are up about 32% in the last 5 years. And thanks in part to the pandemic, our insurance has nearly doubled in just 3 years to almost $20,000 a year. On the income side, we've seen some slight increases in non-pledge income, largely driven by Kinderhouse revenue and the new contract there, and also some bequests. But aside from Kinderhouse rent, this income is very hard for us to change or affect in any way. The largest share of our income, of course, comes from pledges. And we've indeed had a very generous congregation over the years. But the reality is that our financial needs are now in danger of outpacing that generosity. Our pledge income has gone from $258,000 in 2018 to about $279,000 this year, assuming all pledges are fulfilled. That's about a 9% increase at a time when our expenses have increased over 20%. And the average pledge per unit, per person or family, has remained virtually the same since 2018. So we're more or less giving the same amounts, we just have a few more people giving than we did before. So our 2024 goal is $308,000. That's about a 10% increase over what was actually pledged for this year. This presents a considerable challenge, particularly when you consider that our pledge goal for 2023, for this year, was $299,000, and we fell $20,000 short of that. Now, we dealt with this year's shortfall by carrying over a surplus from 2022, and that was possible because of a large bequest we received. And the year before, we also needed to balance our budget by carrying over a surplus, which was made possible by a COVID-related tax breaks. So to this point, budget shortfalls have not significantly impacted what we do. But continuing to count on one-off bequests or extraordinary income is not a sustainable approach. To be clear, our church is not facing any sort of imminent financial threat. We've managed our resources well, and we have a good amount of money in our investments. However, if recent trends continue, we will almost certainly have to start tapping into those investments and or cutting our revenues, cutting things that we count on here. And as I alluded to earlier, there are no easy areas for us to find those savings. Cuts would likely have to come from reducing our staff or staff hours, from paring back the music program, or from deferring building improvements, repairs, and maintenance. Or we can each do a little more to ensure that we don't have to change our plans. And so with this year's stewardship campaign, we're asking everyone who has pledged previously to consider increasing your pledge. And for anyone who has not pledged in the past, to consider what you might be able to do this year. If everyone were to give 10% more, we would meet our 2024 goal. Of course, not everyone will be able to increase their pledge or be able to give it all. So we're also asking those who are in the financial position to do so to consider increasing by more than 10% if you're able. Now here's the good news. If we meet our 10% overall goal, we shouldn't need to make similar requests in the years to come. Recent expenses have increased significantly and rapidly, but I expect those increases to moderate in the coming years. In the meantime, we just need to get our revenue to catch up with our expenses. And then our requests of you will moderate in the coming years. If we don't meet our goal, I will almost certainly be back here in front of you a year from now. And I promise to speak even longer with more boring numbers and more bad jokes about cathedrals. I think that's probably all the incentive you need. Thank you very much. And please, if you have any questions or want to hear more about our budgeting and finances, join us for coffee hour.
Thank you, Don. We'll continue with our regular offering and then move quickly towards our close. Do I have some? Yes, all right, I love it. Yes, just come on up. Thank you, Don and Kurt. our spirit for our closing hymn, commission, and sung benediction. Our closing hymn is found on page 14. As we go forth this morning, I invite you simply to hold the words of that St. Francis prayer in your heart as they guide you in the world. O God, make us instruments of your peace.
Yes,